Right, so he has made that statement, and of course he has referred to many other things. To break down that first press conference from the Prime Minister in waiting of Pakistan, I'm joined on the broadcast this evening by Pakistani British journalist and author Reham Khan, also of course Imran Khan's former wife. Thank you very much, Reham, for joining us this evening once again. You heard that little bit that we played out from the briefing that Imran held a short while ago. He strikes a conciliatory note when it comes to India. That struck many of us as interesting. What do you make of the tone and tenor, specifically when it comes to his references to India?
Thank you, Aisha. Well, I mean, if you go by rhetoric and if you go by rhetoric of the politicians, and we have always been charmed by the rhetoric, particularly of the Prime Minister selected recently. And I think that it is charming to hear that. The proof is in the pudding, as I say. So I think that if he means it, then I think all Pakistan and all India would support that. We want peace in the region. And we want a conciliatory tone, obviously. So certainly, this is a good first step. I would say that this is not a bad start, and it is certainly something that should be appreciated. But I hope that he means it, because we've heard so many good things coming from Imran, and we heard these at the beginning of his. In fact, I mean, if you listen to the whole bit, actually, the talk about not using the Prime Minister house, and we don't want to live in these palatial apartments, and we want to be. We've heard them all before when he was given the government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. But those promises, I'm sorry to report, he failed us on those promises. So if he means that he wants peace in the region, then I think he needs to put his words into practice very, very soon. And certainly some of the extremist elements that he has been seen supporting recently, he needs to detach them himself and the party very quickly from them. He needs to show us in Parliament that that he will be making himself available for Parliament, since in the last tenure he has only appeared in Parliament 5%, less than 5% of the times, and every single time it's been actually been on foreign issues, particularly when it has been a Saudi related issue. He's made his presence in the Parliament. So I think that we need to have, of course, he needs to talk to people. If you look at his past record, I mean, it's been confusing, and that's how I've always described him, certainly in the recent past, that it's confusing. He says one thing and then he does another.
Right.
So if you look at the pictures, for example, one of the main complaints that the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf had and made and were very vocal about were the Nawaz Sharif-Modi relationship and the friendliness in this relationship. Then when we saw back in 2016, when Imran requested for a meeting with Prime Minister Modi at the time, and he looked very, very friendly in that image. But he wasn't, of course, criticized for that friendliness. So as I said, I think that if he does what Pakistan wants him to do, and what Pakistanis and moderate Pakistanis, the vast majority of us are moderate, what we want from our leadership, then that is peace. But if he is still listening to scripts handed down to him,
right,
which has been really been a huge problem in his political career, then that would be very disappointing for the electorate.
Right, you mentioned a friendly appearance when he was, with Mr. Modi, but also he spoke of his many Indian friends in today's speech as well. Do you think he has the capability, I mean, beyond the rhetoric, let's say he does have the opportunity to improve ties with India, does he have the capability, though, to reshape the ties with the neighbor?
You see, Aisha, the capability, it's not a huge amount of intelligence that you need to do this sort of thing. What is really the most important thing for leadership, for a leader? What defines a leader? And courage defines a leader. And I think that if you believe in things with conviction, then people follow you. And that's the whole point of being a hero, being a leader. And that's something that has been missing from the Imran that we've seen in the political arena. We saw that, we saw leadership ability on the field, on the cricket field, and he was appreciated for it. But in recent times, particularly, we've seen him get the label of Mr. U-turn purely because, he doesn't really fulfill his promises. That's the main problem people have from him. And actually, that goes across all leadership or so-called leaders or wannabe leaders in Pakistan, that the courage just fails them. There is a lack of courage. There is a vacuum in our leadership. And part of the reason that he's been many fingers pointing at him today, myself included, we are looking at him being appointed to this position purely because he has been bowing at all the right places and not really displaying courage or displaying his own sense of conviction or his own ideology. And that is the fear. If he has and I hope for the sake of Pakistan, I sincerely wish for Pakistan that he does exhibit some courage and speaks for those who want the best for Pakistan and, speaks for the 220 million people that he is there to represent. Then only will he be defined as a leader. Prime ministers come and go, but what you do as a prime minister, the decisions you take, that is what makes you a leader, and that is for all of us to see. And here's wishing Pakistan the best of luck.
Absolutely. In fact, let's before we go any further into the repercussions or so, let's say the implications of that speech, let's listen in specifically to what Imran Khan said. Remember, he stayed clear of Twitter and television screens for much of the day. In fact, many people have come out to congratulate him for that, for showing a degree of maturity, for waiting a full 24 hours before he finally made a statement at around 5 p.m. local time in Pakistan. This is what he had to say about ties with India.
मुझे थोड़ा अफसोस हुआ ये पिछले चंद दिन ये इलेक्शन में कि जो हिंदुस्तान के मीडिया ने जिस तरह मुझे पोर्ट्रे किया, ऐसे लगा जैसे मैं कोई बॉलीवुड फिल्म का विलन हूँ. यानी ऐसे लगा कि जैसे हर चीज़ जो हिंदुस्तान के लिए बुरी है वो होगी अगर इमरान खान ताकत में आ जाए. मैं वो पाकिस्तानी हूँ जो शायद हिंदुस्तान में सबसे ज़्यादा वाकफियत लोगों से है. हिंदुस्तान सारा फिरा वो क्रिकेट की वजह से. मैं वो पाकिस्तानी हूँ जो समझता हूँ कि अगर हमारे और पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान के ताल्लुकात अच्छे होते हैं तो ये बर्रे सगीर के लिए बेहतरी है. अगर हम ये गुर्बत कम करना चाहते हैं बर्रे सगीर में, जो कि सबसे नंबर 1 प्रायोरिटी होनी चाहिए किसी भी गवर्नमेंट की, तो सबसे बेहतर ये हो कि हमारी एक दूसरे से ट्रेड टाइज चले, हम एक दूसरे से तजारत करें, और जितना हम तजारत करेंगे दोनों मुल्कों का फ़ायदा है. बदकिस्मती ये है कि हमारे इश्यूज़ के अंदर जो सबसे बड़ा इशू, कोर इशू है, वो कश्मीर है. कश्मीर में जो हालात हैं और जो कश्मीर के लोगों ने पिछले 30 साल में जो उनकी ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन हो रही है, जो होनी थी, अगर फ़ौज से मसले हल हों और शहरी इलाकों में आप फ़ौज लेके जाएंगे, कहीं भी दुनिया की फ़ौज जब शहरी इलाके में जाती है ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन है. और कश्मीरी लोगों ने बड़ा सफ़र किया इस वक्त. कोशिश होनी ये चाहिए पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान की लीडरशिप को कि हमें टेबल पे बैठ के हम कोशिश करें, इस मसले को हल करें. ये जाने तो नहीं लगा. और अगर यही ब्लेम गेम ही चलती रहेगी कि ये पाकिस्तान की वजह से ये हो रहा है और पाकिस्तान सारा वक्त हम समझते हैं कि बलूचिस्तान में जो हो रहा है वो हिंदुस्तान की वजह से हो रहा है, ये तो हम स्क्वायर 1 पे हैं इस वक्त. मैं ये चाहूँगा कि अगर हिंदुस्तान की लीडरशिप तैयार है, हम बिल्कुल तैयार हैं कि हम अपने ताल्लुकात बेहतर करें. आप एक कदम हमारी तरफ आएंगे, हम 2 कदम आपकी तरफ जाएंगे, लेकिन आगे भी तो बढ़ें. अभी तक तो एक 1 साइडेड किस्म की रिलेशनशिप है कि ब्लेम किया जा रहा है पाकिस्तान को. हर जिस किस्म की दुनिया में कहीं दहशतगर्दी हो तो पाकिस्तान को ब्लेम किया जाता है. तो मैं ये चाहूँगा, मैं कन्विक्शन से कह रहा हूँ कि ये दोनों, ये सब कॉन्टिनेंट के लिए सबसे ज़रूरी चीज़ है कि हमारे मुल्कों के अंदर दोस्ती हो और हम अपने जो मेन इशू है उसको डायलॉग से हल करें.
All right, let me go back to Reham on that note. Reham, going by that statement from Imran, I have to say, for somebody who is considered, an establishment spokesperson, someone who's been put there by the Pakistani army, he has struck a very balanced note in some ways on what he perceives to be the route to peace between India and Pakistan. He made mention of Kashmir, of course, which is part of the narrative usually when it comes to people, in positions in Pakistan, but he in the same breath does mention Balochistan as well, which makes me wonder what happens now if he is let's say an army's puppet. Will he do the army's bidding? Will he be able to come good on these lofty ideals when it comes to maintaining a peaceful relationship between India and Pakistan?
Well, Aisha, I would go further and say that he said all the right things, all the things that we would want to hear. So it is wonderful and refreshing to hear any politician in Pakistan say those things. And I think that they will be positively received not only in India, but it's I suppose encouraging for those who are his critics. And I can go back to 2013, and I can tell you that this is 2013-2014 when Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was first elected. And I remember that as a journalist, as a presenter, one of the issues that we were criticizing, or Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif at the time was being criticized, was for this most favored nation status that was allegedly something Nawaz Sharif wanted to give to India. And those mouthpieces that I repeatedly say sit on Pakistani TV and do the bidding of the establishment, and and Imran's script has been surprisingly always matching those mouthpieces. So I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but they were very anti this most favored nation status. And these were the elements who were criticizing Nawaz Sharif for his body language, for his conciliatory tone towards India, for his friendliness towards Modi, for his oath-taking, acceptance of the invitation for the oath-taking. He says in one breath that he has friends and he's traveled in India and he has so many developed interests in India. Of course, we know that. We've grown up with those bits and pieces of information. And of course, he's much loved in India. And anything that he says negatively about India, for example, in the run-up to the elections, a lot of Indian fans, a lot of Indian followers have messaged me and said, it's heartbreaking to see we are fans and we love this cricket hero, and for him to say these things, this is really, really sad for us to hear. But this is the same man, these are the same people who were criticizing Nawaz Sharif for adopting this very soft tone towards India. So I think that let's not doubt him, let's not be too paranoid about it. As I said, for Pakistan's sake, for the sake of the region's peace, I hope that he means it. I will not even go into my inside info and say that there have been so many times where he's charmed me off my feet and I've believed everything that he said. I've believed that as a voter. I've believed that in a personal capacity. And then, sadly, he has failed on those promises. But he can be very convincing. Let's hope that he's saying this with conviction and that I'm wrong today. That is what I would fervently want to believe. Adding on to this, the Balochistan thing, this is the problem, you see. And I have this problem not only with Imran and Pakistani politicians, I have this problem with Indian anchors as well as Indian journalists and Indian politicians as well, that you cannot equate both of these. It's not the same issue. Balochistan is a completely different issue to Kashmir. And so we must not even, there are no parallels to be drawn here. It's a completely different issue. Kashmir, let's be reminded. Let's remind Imran, let's remind India, let's remind everyone, Kashmir is a different issue. It's an issue about dispute of an occupation. In Pakistan, we believe that it's an integral part of Pakistan, and India doesn't want to let go and doesn't want to give the right to plebiscite. So this is a completely different issue. And then, of course, on top of that, as a social activist, for me, Kashmir is a human rights issue. It's a human rights violation issue. I refuse to accept the statement given out that, a 4-year-old cannot be a terrorist, whatever his identity, whatever his religion, and whatever his nationality might be. Here, equating it with Balochistan seems to sort of suggest that he is still slightly on a script but he is saying something which is expected. Of course, we would expect a Prime Minister elect or a Prime Minister hopeful to say the right things.
Right.
But let's see whether he carries it forward in his in Parliament and in his meetings and dealings with India.
Right. I mean, anyone with political aspirations has an opinion when it comes to Kashmir. One can't really, take it off the table at any point in time. Stay with me, Reham. Imran Khan, as Reham had mentioned a short while ago, did meet with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi a few years ago. Back then, he'd spoken about the need for peace with India. Let's listen in to what he said back then.
हिंदुस्तान से अमन का मतलब ये कि हम अपने इंसानों के ऊपर पैसा खर्च कर सकेंगे। और नरेंद्र मोदी से मैं मिला हिंदुस्तान जाके, मैंने उससे ये बात भी की और उसने मेरे से इस चीज पे इत्तेफाक किया कि हमें हर सूरत अपने मसले बातचीत से हल करने चाहिए और जंग कोई हल नहीं है। खास तौर पे दो मुल्क जिनके पास न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स हैं, उनको जंग का सोचना भी नहीं चाहिए। और मैंने ये भी कहा कि लोग कोशिश करेंगे अमन को डिरेल करने के लिए, इसलिए कि एक छोटा सा मखसूस तबका है जो नहीं चाहता कि अमन हो पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान में, और उसने मेरे से इत्तेफाक किया।
Right. Reham, to expand the gamut of our conversation, this, of course, would have been a completely different broadcast had Imran Khan not spoken before you and I began chatting. But I want to ask you also, he does have this image of somebody being, someone who has is impulsive, who is short-tempered. He's now going to be in control of a nuclear-armed state. Is that something that should be of worry, not just to India, but the larger region, so to speak?
Well, let's be very clear about this. So we've all said, he said some very politically correct things, and we can be very politically correct as journalists, but I think I can be allowed to be a little bit politically incorrect or sort of take a little bit of liberty here. Let's not forget that this sweeping landslide is not really the electorate. Let's not make any mistake in realizing and saying it outrightly that this is a win for the military establishment. The way this result has come out, this is quite unrealistic. In fact, I think Imran has lost integrity and credibility, because had this not been happened, had there not been this engineering, had there not been this manipulation of results, actually Imran could possibly have formed a government, maybe a coalition government, and maybe retained that sort of credibility and that interest. Today, a lot of people are questioning, and rightly so, that this seems like a manipulated, engineered result, and of course everybody can be forgiven because they've been very blatant about it. I also think that they choose to be blatant about it because they want to show very clearly who the boss is. And we understand in Pakistan that the boss is not Imran. So let's also be clear that the risk of a nuclear weapon or the risk of Imran having any sort of authority is pretty minimal. Of course, he might be the operative who was made to do certain things, because you always need a politician. You need a scapegoat. We've always had politicians in Pakistan used as scapegoats. Politicians are corrupt, politicians are impulsive, politicians are this, politicians are that, but really, who is the boss? And with this result, we have yet again reinforced the perception, the narrative, and we, I think in Pakistan, I mean the powers that be, have reinforced this intentionally, that we are the boss, and unless you toe the line, you cannot come into position, you cannot come into power. So anything that is actually happening on, whether it's Kashmir or whether it's nuclear weapons or even a war, God forbid, is going to be predetermined by not those who sit on the prime ministerial position. Why? Because the Foreign Office has always been taken away. So the Foreign Office has always been a little bit of, we are just paying lip service when we say we have somebody appointed in the Foreign Office. And this is why for Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, a much stronger candidate with a stronger mandate, a popular vote, when he came in, he was never allowed to make Foreign Office decisions or to make foreign policy. And where there was a problem, it was actually on the problem where there was a tug of war, particularly on the Afghan policy. And also, you see, the things that Imran is saying in the speech there,
right?
He is negating everything that he said elsewhere. because he has had a problem with Nawaz Sharif being over-friendly. And we've heard in Pakistan, in several speeches, Imran being very outspoken, in fact, being very cruel and harsh when it comes to Nawaz Sharif's soft stance on India, and they've blamed it on his business contacts. They've always said that the reason he wants this is because Nawaz Sharif is a businessman, and he wants business ties because he's a businessman. So, you see, it can't be Sharif to say this, and why is it right for Imran to say this? So I'm sorry, but at the moment, the way the results have been engineered, the way the results have come out, there are so many questions to be answered. People are, you know, not left with any ambiguity about who the boss is. So I think I would worry about who has the authority, and I don't really think that Imran has any authority.
All right, taking that, I mean, fair enough, if let's say the role of the army is as entrenched as a lot of people have referred to it as, including yourself, but isn't the PTI's victory, isn't Imran Khan's victory, Reham, also as much about the failure of the two other bigwigs of the PMLN and the PPP's failure to inspire confidence in the people? I mean, look at Punjab itself. Imran Khan's party last time around compared to this time have made huge gains. So there was a vacuum, and I suppose his rhetoric and his persona were able to fill that space that was left behind.
I think that the PMLN certainly have made mistakes, but I don't think that they've made any mistakes when it comes to securing their seats in central Punjab. I think that this is a mandate stolen, and I'll be very clear about it. So I don't think that Imran has gained because of a popular vote. I don't think that Imran has gained because people have chosen to vote for him. I think it is an engineered result, and central Punjab, I think, has been snatched from the Sharifs and has been snatched from the PMLN and given to Imran. The South Punjab has been part of the pre-poll engineering, where South Punjab suddenly, for 21 years, people who've been in the PMLN, those who belong to the South Punjab, the Saraiki region, were actually, incidentally, Imran also belongs to that. I, as a journalist and as a social activist, have been to these areas, and these areas are those which have been the most deprived in the country, perhaps at par with Balochistan. There is a lot of acid attack violence towards women. There are no jobs here. There's no water at all. And of course, Imran hails from Mia Valley, from the same sort of region. And the people who have recently jumped on the bandwagon have been from the PMLN. So yes, you could say that the feudals and those who have been status quo politicians did not deliver for South Punjab while they were ministers, and their families held ministerial positions in South Punjab. But suddenly, one fine morning, they decided that there was a lot of unfairness and injustice directed towards South Punjab, and they decided to not only jump vote and join Imran, the winning party, the King's party, but also suddenly they've been promised a Saraiki Suba, a separate province. And I don't think a separate province is the issue. The issue is not having status quo politicians who just want the chief ministerial role for themselves in a new province. So I don't buy this narrative that this was popular vote because of the PMLN or the Pakistan People's Party failing. Yes, the Pakistan People's Party has been significantly missing from Punjab, and that has been purely because of the Zardari factor, because the Zardari factor has not been taken kindly to by Punjab origin Pakistan People's Party. So yes, that has been quite damaging. Young Bilawal has made inroads recently, but it was too little too late, I say. The PMLN, the mistakes that they have made, the mistakes are completely different. The mistakes have been in what they have not been able to actually keep some of their loyalist supporters close to them.
Sure.
So some of the criticism that is leveled at them, for example, access to Nawaz Sharif, access to Shahbaz Sharif, and even to the rest of the family, that has been an issue. And that has been an issue where one of the people, one of few candidates who I think is actually a good parliamentarian, there are some good parliamentarians across all parties. There's one or two in Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf also. There are quite a few in PMLN, those who we've grown up seeing and making sure that they have an ethical approach to their constituents. They're very well respected. Shahid Khan Abbasi is one of them. Mehtab Abbasi is one of them. And this is, you know, they would win regardless of which party they belong to, but they've always been with the Pakistan Muslim League. And now, of course, the Pakistan Muslim League Noon. But they have lost. And the reason has been that PMLN has been rather, I think, suffering from grandiosity. I think just a couple of days ago, they were looking at central Punjab being very secure. Right. And I think that some of this comes with, again, a sense of self-entitlement. You have to work at politics and you have to work non-stop. And I do think that a lot of criticism being leveled at Shehbaz Sharif at the moment for the lack of, you know, they've been running the slogan of vote ko izzat do, respect the vote. But the voters have voted. They have taken a lot of risks. They have taken a lot of hardship. They've brought the women out. They've brought the elderly out. But what has PMLN done? There has been no presence. There has been no agitation. There has been no protest. It's everybody is being very, very safe and very, very careful. And so certainly, once again, Maryam Nawaz Sharif's stature has grown in the eyes of many, even those who do not belong to the party. But the fact that there has been a lack of strong leadership is a problem in the PMLN as much as it is a problem in Pakistan People's Party, and also in Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. So it seems like, and maybe I will add on to this, because one could argue that Nawaz Sharif disqualified for life, Maryam Nawaz Sharif disqualified and put away in prison. Maybe they can afford to be a little bit more risky and make those statements against, you know, anti-establishment slogans, for example, or afford to be taking names of serving officers and afford to be a little bit more courageous, maybe. And perhaps Shehbaz Sharif wants to live in the system. I don't know. This is me just sort of, you know, debating what it is. But yes, there have been failings, but not the failings that we are being fed as part of the narrative.
Fair enough. The other factor, I suppose, that is in common between the PMLN and the PPP is the last name. I mean, we're talking about families and dynasties as well. I will press you further on that point in just a second. But before we do that, WION also spoke with the former Indian Foreign Minister Salman Khurshid, who spoke about Imran Khan's early days at Oxford University, where the two of them were actually batchmates. Listen in.
Imran Khan has been declared as the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and to discuss more on this, we're joined by India's former External Affairs Minister, Mr. Salman Khurshid. Thank you for making time for WION, Mr. Khurshid. Begin by asking you, what does his election as Prime Minister of Pakistan mean to India?
Truthfully, one doesn't know. Imran Khan, Prime Minister Imran Khan, has some following in India in terms of people who've applauded him for his cricket or people who've admired him for his style. But that's largely amongst the literati. His visits to newspaper or journals events in India have been obviously well subscribed and followed, but we are not very clear about his stated position on relationship between India and Pakistan. His is a relatively new party, and he's obviously new to the game of the politics of his country, although he's played an important role in politics over the last 7 or 8 years. But at the top and in an top administrative office, it'll be the first time for him. So we don't know. I think we have to wait and watch. There are lots of conflicting news and information that comes about his having to cut deals with people that we will be uncomfortable with. But if he has a popular mandate in the country and he's to be Prime Minister of an elected government, we can just hope that he will have a positive attitude towards India. And as a new generation politician, and a politician coming from a background which is very different from from the politicians in the past.
Right.
Maybe he will break fresh grounds.
While he addressed the nation, he said that I am very sad. I've been portrayed by the Indian media as a Bollywood villain. He says, I'm a Pakistani who knows India's best and I understand the need for peace. How do you read these statements?
Well, it's a good beginning if that's the statement to be taken seriously. But as I said, when he comes to grips with the reality of politics and public life in Pakistan at the top, not in the street but at the top, what compulsions they have, etc. Would he be able to withstand those pressures, or would he chart out a fresh path and a truly innovative and creative path for peace?
My last question to you, since you've known Imran Khan in the past as well, right from your college days at Oxford University in United Kingdom, how do you see him as the Prime Minister today? I mean, from a cricketer who got a World Cup for his country in the year 1992 and now a politician and a Prime Minister of the country perhaps, how do you see him as a personality, as a person who you've known closely somewhere in your college circles?
Well, I mean, I haven't known him closely. I had watched him play cricket at Oxford. He was the Oxford captain when I got to Oxford. Obviously an extremely attractive cricketer and with enormous support. And then, of course, he had a life of glamour in many ways. And that life of glamour has got him into trouble as well, but it's certainly some things. What
is that life of glamour, if you could tell us?
Well, the life of glamour is the what you call the page 3, the glitterati, the having married into a top family of the British elite, and subsequently again the very celebrated weddings that he's had. So I mean, it's no ordinary mortal's life that he's led. He has had the life of a remarkable kind of a princely person, but he's also fought very hard. He's fought very hard a regime that can be quite tough politically, and he's now succeeded.
That was a very enjoyable description, Reham, of what Salman Khurshid thought of the glamorous life of Imran Khan, if you will. But to go back to dynasty and family, that's something he mentioned as well. He did marry Jemima Goldsmith, pardon me. He has always been from a wealthy family, Imran Khan himself. He's been to Oxford University. He's always considered, part of a rarefied circle, if you will. But he still doesn't have a family name that has helped him through in politics, something that, the PMLN and the Bhuttos are often accused of dynastic politics. It's a refrain even in Indian politics today. Do you think that is something that is different this time around? It does mark a change in things going forward in Pakistan?
Yes and no, because you see, I think with dynastic politics in Pakistan, what we've seen, there's good dynastic politics as well. If you think about what Benazir Bhutto did, it was almost as if she had earned her position, she had done the time. So I think that a lot of people will agree that she had been groomed into the role. And I have a 15-year-old at home, and I don't know how many places can you drag a 15-year-old into. And so I think that sort of spirit and that motivation, she was motivated from a very young age, and then she rose to the role. Nobody could have expected that a popular leader like Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, a prime minister, could have been executed the way he was. Quite an unfair, unjust thing to happen. So I think sometimes people are pushed into that. I don't think you can blame her to be pushed into that role. Even less controversial, perhaps Begum Naseem Wali Khan, who was again pushed into that. So wives and daughters sometimes get pushed into these roles, and I think Maryam Nawaz also. I think if anybody was against dynastic politics, then Imran has actually, and I've said this time and time again, there was not Nawaz Sharif who pushed Maryam Nawaz into the heir apparent role. Maybe he'd wanted it, but actually what expedited it was Imran's politics. Was actually the planners who hated this woman so much. There was so much visceral hatred directed towards this woman that I think that has actually propelled her into a leadership role. And then, of course, people are maybe born into certain families, but they might not have the ability, they might not have the capability. So one could argue also that if you're born into a medical background family, you're probably more likely to have a better start in sort of the medical field, purely because that's something that's discussed around you. So if you're in a political family, you will have some sort of ground knowledge of it. Of course, in the film industry, we see that little head start, but ultimately it depends what sort of talent you have. So I wouldn't completely throw it out of the window. It is something that happens not only in the Indian subcontinent, it's happened in the US. And of course, we have the Bush family, the Kennedys. So we have that. I'm not a huge shall we say, follower of, I'm not really fond of this idea, but I'm not fond of the dynastic politics for the same reason that I'm not fond of celebrity-led politics also, which okay. Imran is pretty much almost at the same level. Imran does get the credit that he had to build this for himself. So certainly, but equally then Nawaz Sharif had a very long struggle. You could say that he actually struggled, and then with his brother at the time. So it's maybe almost similar. And the reason I say that is similar is because although Imran didn't have a feudal background, he didn't have a family name, but he had a huge celebrity career. The only celebrity, the only personality that we've had in Pakistan, which is quite sad actually, that in 70 years we've not been able to produce another celebrity, and that is a failure of the system. So he is a huge individual success, a hero and celebrity in his own right.
Okay. From
his cricketing days, and also the princely life that Salman Khurshid rightly pointed out because of the glamour associated with him. But it forms a very small collection of people who sit in Lahore and urban Karachi, and they form our elitist society. And I think that when we talk about princely lifestyles or palatial houses, I think Imran is as guilty as maybe Maryam Nawaz Sharif of only living in that little bubble and not really even drinking the water that Pakistanis drink. They all drink out of green bottles imported from Switzerland. So he needs to be more in touch. And I, of course, have inside info when I can tell you that he doesn't have a life of an average Pakistani or an average person, because he's such a huge mega celebrity. So that has to be taken into account.
Okay, so Dynasty maybe not associated with Imran Khan, but a leg up all the same is, I think, what you're driving at. We've spoken, Reham, about a lot of the points that he touched upon in that speech today. But one thing that was conspicuously absent was a reference to terrorism. He did say that Pakistan is a country that is in dire need of stability today, but he didn't use the word terrorism at any point in time. Was that a conscious decision? And if so, why do you think he chose to keep the word out?
You see, there are two things. I've already hinted that courage is what what I know on a personal level, even in personal decisions, the courage and also what Salman Khurshid pointed out was the fact that can he take the pressure. Now, of course, as a batchmate, maybe he knows maybe a little bit more than I do, but I didn't see that sort of pressure and coping mechanism in all the time that I was with him. I felt that he does crack under pressure. He is not very decisive. He needs to be told what to do, and then he will listen to the strongest, most influential, financially stable voice. So he might not listen to the voice of reason, but he will listen. He knows very clearly which side his bread is buttered. And at the moment, you see, again, let's not pretend that any prime minister has had a free rein when it comes to foreign policy. Any person in Pakistan, even as a media personality, there are certain areas which are no-go. And so talking about religion, talking about extremism, people tend to be very cautious. If anybody took on a fight, it was Mohtarama Benazir Bhutto, and then we saw what happened to her. So and also that again was perhaps not a very open fight, but whoever has actually called out the militants and terrorists, and I can tell you from a personal experience that I was sat tweeting something, and Imran at the time was my husband and told me not to tweet that, because he said these are very dangerous people and we don't want to get into a fight with that. So there is a culture in Pakistan, and there is an extremist militant supremacy, and they have a cover which is very clear because they were allowed to have a politicized route, given a route into parliament. And that's what Salman Khurshid was hinting at when he said that this is the problem. We cannot really say what Imran will do. If we look at track record, it's not a very hopeful picture, because he's never really stood up for anything which is anti-extremism. He's just given 57 million to Madrasa Haqqaniya, and at a time when the budgetary allocation was set to be at its minimum for schools that were already in existence in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And what we have seen with the Women's Protection Bill, again, we still don't have Women's Protection Bill. They were in power in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa for 5 years, but they could not take the pressure of their coalition partner, the Jamaat-e-Islami. The syllabus was adapted to suit the Jamaat-e-Islami. Christian symbols were removed from our primary school syllabus in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So I mean, that was a very small province. He could have maybe, he could easily could have said that I can get away with this here, but he didn't have the courage to do that. Does he have the courage to do that when he has much higher stakes? This is a position that he wanted so badly. Does he want to lose it as soon as he's in there? So I think that is the concern. Will he have the spine to do what other prime ministers have tried to do and been removed for doing or aspiring to do so?
Reham, we're about at the business end of the broadcast now. I want to pick your brain on a couple of other things that Imran brought up in that press briefing on foreign policy. The first country that he ended up referring to was quite predictably China. He said that he wants to improve ties and strengthen ties with China. What exactly does that mean economically for Pakistan? And of course, when we're looking at the larger question of the relationship between India and Pakistan.
Absolutely. So I've always had this idea that Pakistan, of course, is, we've always talked about its strategic position, but I think it can be a good thing, and it has been a bad thing for us in the past. And the reason I say that is because we have served as a proxy for other countries, much to, regretfully I say that, and we might have just turned ourselves into a proxy ourselves. And I see there an opportunity also where we should really be a transit country for trade, for India, for Afghanistan, and for Central Asian countries. And so this should be really on the European Union model. Now, when the Chinese started investing and when the CPEC project was started, it was actually done very, we felt that Nawaz Sharif, and he got quite a lot of criticism from people like myself for doing it very covertly. The parties were not taken into confidence, and I saw, of course, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf protesting, but all for the sort of reasons that they were protesting was actually a little bit of an anti-CPEC sort of line that they took. And once I was in the house as Imran's wife, I was called in to sit in a delegation meeting with the Chinese, and this was actually sort of unexpected. I was there to pitch a film idea to a businessman, and I was told that there were a few people who wanted to meet with me, and I assumed that it was something to do with my work. But something had been arranged, and so they wanted to route to Imran via his wife, and I was a bit puzzled because I've always been pro-CPEC, I've always been pro-trade, and through the conversation I understood that they had this idea that Imran and his party were anti-Chinese or anti-CPEC. And the reason they got this idea, so of course I did what I could. I didn't really have any knowledge of what the party wanted to do. I did try to get the party and Imran interested in the CPEC, and I was more interested to develop the west of our country, the Western Corridor, which of course the Nawaz Sharif's regime also had overlooked completely. But what I felt that the Chinese were not very confident about their relationship with Imran. They felt a little bit nervous. It was very, very visible. I, of course, fed the information back. Later on through the year, I found that the Chief Minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and this is post-divorce, he made some very disturbing comments about the Chinese Pak Economic Corridor, and would frequently take U-turns over these comments, and he made those comments in the assembly. Now, what the Chinese feel is that Imran has a very strong US tilt, and this is what was conveyed to me. And of course the US have a very anti-China tilt at the moment, and they wouldn't want that much investment. There is nervousness in the US about the Chinese investing so much in Pakistan, and of course this bloc that is developing. And part of my analyst head says that actually that was the reason that Nawaz Sharif wanted to promote trade in this region, in this bloc. So India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, the Central Asian states, and that was not too not taken that or handled. I think the US were very nervous about China and Chinese economic supremacy, and so anything that happened through the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa cabinet and through the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa ministers was actually the line that the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf took, and it was a very anti-China line. So it's refreshing once again to hear that he has tried to say that we are interested in trade and promoting trade. Of course, we have no choice. For Pakistan, it's a huge investment by the Chinese into the region, into Pakistan particularly.
Would it be fair to say,
also,
I apologize
the Chinese,
to come in there,
have a lot of evidence.
Allow me to come in, Reham. Would it be fair to say then that
well, I was
you
just
feel
going to
this
add
is...
that, of course, the dharnas,
that this is a course correction by Imran Khan on China, that considering that there is, let's say, a strong policy he has towards China today, it's on account of nervousness about the relationship with the United States.
I think that it is appeasing to the Chinese, and I think that once again, you have to. I know what I know, and I know that Imran has a US tilt, and I know that there is overtly a an anti-US rhetoric, an anti-drone rhetoric. But what I have seen, a very close relationship, and I mentioned this in my book as well, a relationship with Richard Olson, and he wanted to know my views about India, and I felt that I was perhaps not meant to say as much as I did. But what I feel is that through the last 5 years, here's the evidence. So forget what Reham Khan thinks. Here's the evidence. We have had dharna sit-ins, coincidentally, at the time when the Chinese wanted to visit, and the Chinese were not very happy about it. So this didn't happen once, it happened several times. So we had it during the sit-in, the 126 days of the protest, where these meetings were, and of course there was nervousness because of this lack of security and instability and chaos in Pakistan. And so a lot of people, particularly the Chinese, felt that this was done to create an atmosphere of instability and chaos, to delay this investment and equity by the Chinese, and it did cause problems for the Sharif's government at the time. And then once again, when the Panama thing started again, they were again the November lockdown, so they coincided with certain meetings. Then we had Pervez Khattak go on record and say, I will not allow the first convoy to pass through our region, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. So of course this doesn't build confidence, and every single meeting that I've had with people who are from the US Embassy or with US interests, and their concern for Khyber Pakhtunkhwa was a very anti-China tilt, and that's fair enough. You see, right now for Pakistan, for Imran and for the authorities, we need to have a balancing act. We need to balance our relations with India. We need to balance our relations with, of course, Chinese, because we do need them. We've committed to them. We've already committed a long time ago to them. But equally, we have to balance our relationship with the US as well. Sure. And I think that this comment, this entire speech was very well worded, politically correct, but I think it was more appeasing to the Indians, appeasing to the Chinese, sounding like a statesman. And I can't really find any fault with the words chosen, with the way it was delivered, the timing of it. Everything was perfect. But the problem I have is that we've seen so many U-turns, and we've seen so many policy decisions which go against what he says. For example, even the announcement is, it's deja vu. This is exactly what was said to us when he got the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government.
Right.
We'll convert the Chief Minister's house into a library. I don't think it was ever converted into a library. I do think that any Pakistani Prime Minister who is elected or selected the way Imran has been selected has probably got less power than Nawaz Sharif. So I think perhaps converting the Prime Minister's house into a library might be the only thing that Imran has any power over.